A very good morning, students. In our previous video, we discussed the concepts, the examples for cryptographic encryption and cryptography decryption. And after that, we have also seen the key size and key range concepts. Okay, with those concepts, we have concluded your first unit, and we are about to enter. In this particular class, we are going to start your second unit. In your second unit, majorly we are going to discuss two concepts. The first concept is asymmetric key encryption algorithms, and the second one is symmetric key encryption algorithms. Okay, so if you go and if you see your syllabus, we majorly have only two concepts in your second unit. One is symmetric key encryption, and the other one is asymmetric key encryption. So already we are quite familiar with these terms, symmetric key encryption and asymmetric key encryption. We said symmetric key encryption is nothing but we use only one particular key in both encryption as well as in decryption processes. So we are going to use only one key throughout this cryptographic concept. So if you use such a mechanism for your crypto system, we call that crypto system as a symmetric key cryptography system, isn't it? So if you are using more than one key, that is basically we discuss with two keys. One is public key and the other one is private key. If you are following this mechanism, then we call this cryptographic mechanism or cryptographic system as public key cryptography or asymmetric key cryptography system. Okay, so we majorly focus on these two things and what are the design principles we have inside this symmetric key or asymmetric key encryption, and we also discuss some of the examples, okay, for this symmetric key encryption as well as asymmetric key encryption. So when we talk about examples, not only giving the name, but also we have to see in detail how a particular cryptographic system, how a particular cryptographic algorithm will work internally. So we will not go, because we have plenty of algorithms. To date, we have plenty of algorithms standardized for this cryptography systems. Okay, to perform encryption and decryption, we have plenty of algorithms standardized by the organizations. But we discuss only the traditional approaches because we are at the first stage of this cryptographic systems. So we are going to discuss what they have defined in your syllabus, what they have given in your syllabus, and what they have mentioned in your curriculum. So we go accordingly, and if you see the curriculum, they basically put only the traditional approaches, not the advanced what we are currently using in the market, but they have proposed to discuss the classical approaches or the traditional approaches, the inception days of your cryptographic systems. Okay, so as we know, the first cryptographic algorithm is the data encryption standard, that is DES, that we see in detail. Then we have AES, advanced data encryption standard, that also we see. Then other like RC4, RC5, Diffie-Hellman, we have different algorithms. All those algorithms we will see step by step. Okay, so let's just first start your second unit, and as I said, the first concept in your second unit is symmetric key ciphers. Okay, symmetric key ciphers, ciphers in the sense algorithms. So we have given this ciphers name because the algorithm will give you the cipher, the converted form of your plain text. So that is the reason why the name is given to the algorithm. So whenever I say cipher, you have to assume it as an algorithm only. Okay, so symmetric key cipher in the sense the algorithm which uses only one key for both encryption as well as decryption. Okay, the same key will be used for encryption as well as for decryption. So generally these type of symmetric key algorithms, they are block sized algorithms, isn't it? They are going to follow the approach where the complete plain text will be divided into equi size of blocks, and each block will be processed independently. So because of that reason, we also call these symmetric key encryption algorithms or symmetric key ciphers as block ciphers. Okay, So we discussed, isn't it? There are two different types of ciphers, block ciphers and stream ciphers. So this symmetric key encryption, it is one example for block cipher algorithm. So if we go with block cipher approach inside this symmetric key ciphers, so what type of design principles we have, that we discuss over here. Okay, so the basic scheme, if you see what approach we follow when we do this block cipher, we are going to have an encryption process. So what we give as an input to this encryption process, in the sense, the block of plain text. So whatever plain text we have, so to send whatever plain text we have to perform, I mean to go with this cryptographic system, that plain text, what we do, that entire plain text we divide into equi-sized blocks, isn't it? So the entire plain text we divide into, suppose if this is your plain text, what we do, we divide that plain text into equi-sized blocks. So like this we divide. Okay, and we process each block independently, each block independently with the help of this system. So that means if you have n number of blocks, how many times you have to perform this process? N number of times. In each in each process, in each step, what you do, you will convert one block into an equi-size ciphertext block. This is your plain text, isn't it? So let me just explain with more clarity. So suppose if you have like your plain text, so this is your plain text. So what we are doing with this plain text, we are dividing this plain text into equi-size blocks. So like this we are dividing equi-size blocks, so and so on, like this we are dividing. So let us assume how many blocks we have here? N blocks. N blocks of what? Of, this is my plain text, isn't it? So this is my plain text, and I have divided this plain text into n number of equi-size blocks. Equi-size means where each block is going to have equal size. Okay, all these blocks are going to have equal size. So whatever size this first block is having, the second block is also going to have the same size. So that is the reason why we are calling this particular algorithm as block cipher algorithm. Okay, so here, so in order to convert all these blocks into cipher text, what we have to do, we have to give these blocks to the encryption algorithm. We have to give these blocks to the encryption algorithm, and that encryption algorithm, what it will do, yeah, it will process this plain text blocks into ciphertext blocks. Generally, those ciphertext blocks are going to have the same size as your plain text. It is generally, not always. Okay, so this encryption algorithm, what it will do, it will convert, we'll assume that general concept only, so it will convert that n number of plain text blocks into n number of ciphertext blocks. So here what we are going to have, we are going to have the ciphertext. Okay, the converted, the scrambled text, what I mean to say. So this is the mechanism, this is the basic principle behind your block cipher mechanism. Okay, block cipher, how it will work means, it will take the plain text and it will divide that plain text into equi-size blocks, and it will process one block in each step, one block in each process, we can say. So in, yeah, when you are processing the algorithm, what we give the one block of plain text as an input to that algorithm, and what we are getting, the same size block of cipher. See, as you can see over here, we have the encryption algorithm. Okay, encryption algorithm or encryption process. To this process, we are giving only one block of plain text, and we are gaining in return one block of ciphertext. That you have to remember. So in between this conversion, we are making use of this encryption key. We are utilizing this encryption key. Okay, so many issues we have to discuss. This is just the block diagram, you can say, or the basic scheme, you can say, how we process the plain text into ciphertext inside this block ciphers. Means in this way we process. We are going to have one mechanism. To that mechanism, we give one block of plain text, and we will get one block of ciphertext. And in order to do so, in order to convert the plain text into ciphertext, we will make use of your key. So this thing you have to remember. So yeah, this entire thing already I have explained. So generally what I said, whatever plain text block size we are taking, the same size ciphertext block size we will get from the algorithm. Okay, block ciphertext, a block of plain text bits, a block of plain text bits, and generates a block of ciphertext bits, generally of same size. Generally of same size. The size of block is fixed. Whatever block you are taking inside this block cipher mechanism, the block size, it is fixed. Okay, so it depends on, it is totally dependent on the type of algorithm which you are processing. Okay, so here the plain text block size is fixed inside the given scheme. So it completely depends on the scheme, it completely depends on the algorithm what we are going to use. The choice of block size does not directly affect the strength of encryption scheme. Okay, whatever block size you are taking, it is not going to affect directly the encryption scheme. So there is no assumption that the big size block will give more security or the small size block will give less security likewise. Okay, there is no such contradiction we have over here. Okay, it is completely, it is not going to affect directly, it is not going to affect. In what way it is going to affect, very soon we are going to discuss, but it is not going to affect directly. Okay, the strength of cipher depends on the key length. Whatever key length you are taking, it depends on that one. If the key size is more, obviously you will get more security. If the key size is less, the security will be less, isn't it? So the passcode example you can take. If you have only one digit for your passcode, the security will be very less. In 9 attempts only, if the attacker applies the brute force algorithm, in 9 attempts only he will open your lock, isn't it? If you are considering 0 also, then in 10 attempts, maximum 10 attempts, he will open that lock. Okay, if you consider the average case, how many attempts he has to make? At an average, only 50% of the cases, isn't it? Only 50% of the tries he has to do. So if you apply that average case also, then he has to apply only 5 tries before opening or before unlocking your phone, isn't it? And if you are taking 4, the security will be more. So the security over here inside these ciphers, the strength, security is nothing but the strength of the cipher. It is directly proportional, it is directly dependent on the key size. The more the key size, the more the security. The less the key size, the less the security. So block size, so even though it is not going to affect directly, so we need to focus, or we need to have some attention towards the block size. Okay, so tau any size of block is acceptable, though it is not showing any effect directly on the cryptographic scheme, directly on the cipher scheme. The following aspects has to be followed before selecting the block size. What size of block we have to take means, avoid very small size blocks. If the block size is very small, okay, the brute force, nowhere it is going to affect the scheme, but it is going to affect the brute force attack. Because according to a study, what the cryptographers found is, if you take the block size very small, okay, very small, let us suppose only 1 or 2 letters, okay, 2 letters or 2 characters. So we will not go in terms of bits, but we go in terms of characters, because it is very easy for our understanding. If I go in terms of bit, then that bits again you have to convert into characters to get the understanding. So what I will do is, I will take the example of characters and I will explain with the help of example of characters. Ultimately, whatever cryptographic scheme you will apply, it will not apply on the characters, but it will be applied on bits, isn't it? So whatever algorithm we are going to propose, whatever algorithm we are going to suggest, or whatever algorithm is being standardized, all those are applied only in terms of digital world. It is not going to apply on the real world examples. We are not going to write the letters, isn't it, in cryptographic terminology. It was in ancient days. At that time, they were having some different mechanisms, isn't it, to obtain the cryptography or to obtain the security. But over here, when we are talking about cryptography, or when we are talking about cryptographic system, we are we are merely talking about this digital world only. We are not talking about the real world. Okay, we are not talking about pen and paper. We are more talking about the binary language and binary systems, isn't it? Because we are going to apply all these algorithms or binary level only, at binary level only. So you have to remember that one. But for our understanding, I am taking the examples of characters. Okay, so if you take the small block size, so if you have a big message and I'm dividing that big message into small equi-size blocks, and I have taken this block size as only 2 characters, then what will happen? So one can easily guess, if you have 2 characters, so the meaningful word what you are going to frame with those characters, they are very limited, isn't it? So with 2 words, what you can frame, with 2 letters, what you can frame, like is, and, okay, in, on. We don't have any, more words. At one point, with 2 letter block size, the cryptographer, he can easily perform the brute force algorithm, or he can easily guess this words by simply applying some mechanisms. What he will do means, with those block sizes, he will generate a dictionary. Basically what he do, he will generate a dictionary, and he try to sort out the dictionary in order to gain the knowledge of plain text. He will try to sort out the dictionary in order to gain the knowledge of plain text. So that is the reason why what we have to do, we have to avoid very small block sizes. Okay, it doesn't mean that we have to go for very big block sizes either. So do not have very large size block size, very large block size. So again, there is a problem. We will generally, whenever we divide the block sizes, so let us say we have a plain text, and that plain text we are dividing. We have a plain text, and that plain text we are dividing. So I'm taking, assume that our complete plain text size is like of 63. I'm taking 63 bits, let us assume. Our plain text size is 63 bits, and I want to divide this plain text size into equi-size blocks. Okay, in equi-size blocks, and our block size, let us assume I have taken 24 bits. 24 bits, because generally the block size is going to be in multiples of 8 only. The block size is going to be in multiples of 8 only. That we see over here. You can see here. See, take the block size in multiples of 8 bits. Don't take in any other size. The block size should be multiples of 8, because you know your computer will process the data in multiples of 8 bits only. Every byte in your computer, it is of 8 bits, and using 8 bits only, we can represent all English characters and all symbols on your keyboard very efficiently. Okay, so our block size, it should be a multiple of 8 bits. Okay, so then we have, come over here. If you have 63 bits, let us assume we have taken 24 bits over here. So how we can divide this 63 bits? Blocks of 24 bits. The first block will have 24 bits, and the second block 24 bits. How much we consumed? 48 we consumed. Still how much left? How much left? 2 plus 30, 2 plus 23. Oh, sorry, 2 plus 13. 15 bits left, isn't it? 15 bits left. So what we do means, in order to make this also, because we said all blocks should be of equi-size. All blocks should be of equi-size. We cannot take like this 24 bits, 24 bits and 15 bits. Whatever left out bits we have to pad the extra bits. What we do, we perform the padding of extra bits, so that to make this block as well of this 24 bits. So how many bits we can put over here? How many bits we can put into this? How many bits we can put? 15 means 9 bits, isn't it? We are in short of 9 bits, so that to make this as 24 bits block. So that 9 bits will add from external. So either zeros or ones we are going to add according to our requirement or according to our standard. Either zeros or ones we are going to add, because only 2 bits we have, either 0 or 1. So that we add to this 15, so as to make this as a 24 bit block. So now how many blocks we have? 24-bit, 24-bit and 24-bit. Total 3 blocks I have. I have to process 3 blocks to get the cipher blocks. To get the cipher blocks before we send that to the end user or the destination. So in that sense, we process the, in that sense, we convert our plain text into cipher text, or plain text blocks into ciphertext, or plain text into plain text blocks, we can say. Okay, in this way we are converting plain text into plain text blocks. So avoid very small sizes, because the cryptanalyst will generate a dictionary, and he will try to gain the knowledge about the plain text by making use of that dictionary. So simply, whatever ciphertext you are sending, he will analyze the size. He will analyze the size. As you are sending what we call short size blocks, okay, small size blocks, the analysis will become very easy. The analysis will become very easy. So we have to avoid very small size blocks. So if you take very big size blocks, then the processing will become very inefficient, because your algorithm will take more time to process the block, isn't it? So again, it will be treated as an inefficient technique. So this should be avoided. Taking very large size blocks should also be avoided. We are avoiding this one, small size blocks, and we are avoiding this one also. And always try to select the block size in multiples of 8 only, because your computer processing is entirely dependent on bits and bytes, and every byte is in equivalent to 8 bits. So the basic level, the basic aggregation, what we say, the basic aggregation is 8 bits, isn't it? 8 bits. So everything is on bits. Whatever processing we do is on bits. So we have to take our block size in multiples of 8 only. So the padding is also very important whenever you are doing the division of blocks, and if you have leftover bits which are not equal to your block size, then what we are doing, we are adding some bits to it. We are adding some bits to it so as to make the equal size block. So adding that bits to the leftover bits is nothing but the concept of padding. Just now I have shown, when we divided the blocks of when we divided the plain text, which is of 63 bits, into 24-bit blocks, we got 2 blocks and 15 leftover bits, isn't it? We got 2 blocks of plain text and 15 leftover bits. What we did, we padded, we performed padding of 9 bits to it so as to get the 24-bit block size. So in that way we perform, and this block size, it is also going to play a vital role, even though it is not going to affect the security directly, but it is also going to play a vital role in this block cipher encryption. Hope you understood. Then the design principles of this block ciphers, okay, so they have not been changed since the inception. They have not been changed. When the Feazell cipher was introduced, or the DES mechanism, the DES design was introduced in the early 1970s. So from that point to till date, whatever block ciphers we are using, their design principles are unique. They have not been changed at all. Okay, they have not been changed. So when you are designing a block cipher, you have to focus on 3 major things. The first one is the number of rounds, because in every algorithm it is not a one-shot process, simply giving the input and taking the output. So whatever output we are taking now, that output once again we give as input to perform the second round. So likewise we perform multiple rounds of operations in every cryptographic algorithm. Okay, so having rounds, or the number of rounds, is also a design principle of your cryptographic algorithm. And then design of that function f, whatever encryption process you are performing, we call that encryption process as the function f. Okay, so what type of scrambling mechanisms you have inside that function f, so what permutations you are performing, what transpositions you are performing, okay, what substitutions you are performing, all those will come under this cryptographic function fr. And it is also a major thing. Design of this function f, it is also a major aspect. So we have to consider this also. So next, the last one is key scheduling. So generally whatever key we are taking will not give that key as it is to the encryption mechanism. So all these things internally we are discussing. When you see at a basic level, we are going to have a plain text, we'll apply the key, we will get the ciphertext. But when you see internal mechanism, when you go into deep, okay, when you see the design principles, they will change. Okay, they will change, because as we are discussing at root level, we have to know this in detail. So the number of rounds, moreover, we are not going to perform the entire algorithm in one shot, in one round. So definitely we are going to have multiple rounds where the output obtained again given back as an input to the cryptographic algorithm only. So the number of rounds, your how many rounds of how many rounds of encryption process you are performing, 1 round, 2 round, 3 round, the number of rounds, they are going to play a vital role. Next, the second thing, the design function, okay, the cryptographic function, this also going to play a vital role. What types of permutations, what types of transpositions, substitutions you are performing under this cryptographic function, that also we have to focus. And the last thing, the key scheduling. As I said, the key whatever we have selected, we are not giving that key directly to the encryption process. Rather, from that key, we are going to generate round keys. So that we will see when we discuss the examples of these cryptographic systems. So let us assume if we have 16 rounds in your cryptographic system. If you have 16 rounds, so what we do means, from this actual key, okay, from this actual key, we will generate 16 subkeys, K1, K2, K3, and so on, K16. Okay, we generate 16 keys, and each round, because we are having over here how many rounds, 16 rounds, so in each round we'll utilize one key from these subkeys, one key from these subkeys. So we are not going to use this selected key as it is. Rather, from the selected key, we are getting the subkeys, we are getting the subkeys each for one round, each for one round. And likewise, if you are performing 16 rounds, how many keys we need? 16 keys we need. And these encryption mechanism, this function f, will be applied 16 times on this plain text. Okay, so very soon you will see in detail. So these are the design principles. So number of rounds, the greater the number of rounds, the more difficult it is to perform cryptanalysis. So this is very important point that you have to understand and remember. The greater the number of rounds, it will be more difficult for the cryptanalyst to perform the cryptanalysis of your system. Okay, even if your function is very weak, even if your function, cryptographic function, is very weak, it doesn't matter if you have more number of rounds. Okay, again, if you are selecting more number of rounds, repeatedly you are performing the same operation again and again. It is an hectic task, isn't it? So we have to select the best suited number of rounds for our algorithm. So in the next one, in general, the criterion should be that the number of rounds is chosen so that known cryptanalytic efforts, whatever cryptanalytic efforts, we are not saying cryptanalysis, isn't it here? We are not saying cryptographic here. We are saying cryptanalytic. When I'm saying cryptanalytic, it means breaking. It doesn't mean that constructing or providing the security. It means breaking the security. So whatever efforts we have to break the security, so they have to apply more effort, simply to maximize the effort of this cryptanalysis. Okay, to maximize the effort of this cryptanalysis, what we are doing, we are selecting more number of rounds. Okay, so rather applying simple brute force only breaking your algorithm means it is useless. Okay, if simple brute force is applied and it is breaking your algorithm, then your algorithm is useless. So we have to select an algorithm, and we have to select the number of rounds so as to make our algorithm strong enough to withstand this brute force attack. Not only that brute force attack, but other known cryptanalytic attacks as well. Other known cryptanalytic attacks as well. Not only the brute force, but also the other known. Because whatever cryptanalysts are doing, at some point what will happen, the genuine people or the truth people, what they will do, at some point they will come to know that the negative people, the cryptanalysts, they are applying these type of cryptanalytical attacks so that to break our security. So what they will do, they will list out that mechanism. Okay, they will list out that mechanism, that this type of mechanism the cryptanalysts are applying in order to break our security. They will standardize that, they will publish that, they will make it public. In that way they will do. Once the mechanism, once the technique is public, no more it will be confidential, isn't it? No more it will be confidential. The cryptographers, what they will do, they will study that technique, whatever technique the cryptanalysts they have applied, they will study that technique and they will make their algorithms, strong enough to withstand that type of cryptanalytic technique. Hopefully you understood. So our intention, it is very clear. We have to select the number of rounds in such a way that our algorithm should become strong enough to withstand the brute force attack, as well as whatever they have listed, whatever the cryptographers have listed, the known cryptanalytical attacks. Because unknown we cannot make, isn't it? Once a particular technique is unknown, we cannot make our system strong enough to withstand that unknown technique. But whatever techniques is known, we can make our algorithm strong enough to withstand that technique, isn't it? So our intention, it is very simple. Our goal, it is very simple. We have to select the number of rounds in such a way that it should withstand the brute force attack. First of all, brute force attack, and then the known cryptanalytical attacks. The known cryptanalytical attacks. So go to the next one. Then design of the function f. Okay. So this function f is the heart of your what we call cipher. It is the heart of your block cipher. The function f provides the element of confusion, how you are scrambling the data, what techniques you are applying in it, what substitution mechanism, what transposition mechanism, what permutation combinations you are using in order to scramble the given plain text. All those things will reside inside this function f. Okay. The more, see, it should not be linear. Whatever function you are applying, it should not be linear. Linear in the sense, in an ordered manner. It should not be in an ordered manner. It should be non-linear. Okay. It should be non-linear. The mechanism what you are applying, it should be non-linear. Then only it will provide more security to your algorithm. If it is linear, if it is having some ordered mechanism, it is having some step-by-step approach, definitely the cryptanalyst will get the knowledge of it. And that should not happen in our case, isn't it? That should not happen in our case. If it is a linear algorithm, if your function, if your cryptographic function, if your what we call cipher function, if it is linear, definitely the cryptanalyst will get the knowledge of it. Okay, and it is a dangerous thing for us, isn't it? So what we have to do, we have to apply, always we have to apply the non-linear mechanisms. Non-linear mechanisms in our cryptographic function, so as to make it more complex, so as to make it break free, we can say. Okay, so as to make it difficult for the cryptanalysis to perform. Okay, difficult for any cryptanalyst to break it. Okay, the algorithm should have good avalanche properties. See, this avalanche property I will explain now. So this avalanche property, we will check for all the algorithms, whatever algorithms we discuss in our future classes, we check for this avalanche property. It is very simple. See, when we are converting the plain text into ciphertext, when we are doing this, so if whatever ciphertext we are sending, there are number of attacks that can be applied on this ciphertext. A third party, if he tries to gain that ciphertext and he wants to modify the contents of that ciphertext. So I told some VIP, okay, one of my friend is a VIP, and I told him, or else take the example of our president. Okay, the president is a VIP person, isn't it? And one of his friend, he sent the message to president that he wants to meet him at so and so time, at so and so park or somewhere. Okay, so what will happen? The cryptographer, the cryptanalyst people, what he will do? He will try to steal that message and he will try to modify that message, that fabrication we discussed, isn't it? The type of attacks, and the type of attacks we discussed fabrication. If any cryptanalyst tries to perform the fabrication, that means changing the message content and acting like a genuine person and sending that message to the receiver. So the fabrication of the message, if anywhere happens, what will happen? Yeah, definitely the security will, yeah, the VIP will go into a non-secured location, or um, a threat will come to him, isn't it? So we have to avoid such a condition, we have to avoid such a case. So generally, uh, even if you apply the cryptography in your case, even if you apply the cryptography and you convert your plain text, meet me at 4 p.m., convert that into a cipher text, the the cryptanalyst, if he is good enough, if your algorithm is not having the avalanche property, then what he will do, he will fabricate the message. He will fabricate the message, and he will make that message, instead meet me at 4 p.m., what he will say, meet me at 8 p.m. or meet me at 2 p.m. Likewise, he will change that message, and he will try to gain the advantage of it. He will try to gain the advantage of it. So simply take the example of a bank transaction, where you are seeing your client, or your uh, what we call your customer, to send some money to a bank account number. Okay, to send some money to a bank account number. Then what the fabricator will do, what the cryptanalyst will do means, he will change that bank account number. He will steal your message, and he will change that bank account number inside that message, and that bank account details will be sent to the customer. And what the customer will think, the message is coming from a genuine party, from my vendor. So what I have to do, I have to send the money to my vendor, and he will make use of that bank account number. So simply the money will go in wrong hands, or wrong account, we can say. So how we can avoid this thing? Avoid this thing means with the help of this avalanche property. So avalanche property means, even if you change one single bit inside your ciphertext, it is going to have a major effect on the entire message. Even if you change one single bit, we are not talking about multiple bits or bytes or characters. We are saying one single bit. Even if you change one single bit in the message, it is going to have a major impact, major change on the actual message content. So that means, if the cryptanalyst, if he tries to change any bit in the ciphertext, what will happen? Ultimately, when the decryption will happen, he will get entirely different message, or moreover, he will get a corrupted message, corrupted statement in his message content. So avalanche property means, a small bit level change inside the message should give a drastic, a major change in the actual message. So this thing you have to remember. So see, the algorithm should have good avalanche property. This means, yeah, avalanche, maybe you might have known to this word. Okay, generally in where we see this avalanche means in snowy mountains. We are going to have mountains. On mountains we are going to have snow, isn't it? So the what we call the ski people, they will do, isn't it? They will put some um, special type of shoes to their legs, and they will do this skiing on the mountains. So what will happen? Generally, if they uh, do some kind of vibration on that snow, and if that snow is not thick, what will happen? An avalanche will start from that point. Okay, that small vibration will lead to a very large movement of the snow, or we can say landslide at that, in that area. So who has generated that avalanche? Only a small person with his foot. He generated that vibration in the snow. Because of that vibration, what has happened? The complete snow on the mountain has been fall to the down. Okay, the people who are staying at that point, it is a threat to them. It is very dangerous to them, because the snow will fall onto them, isn't it? The snow will fall onto them, and they will be buried under the snow. So it is very dangerous. This avalanches are very dangerous to the snowy mountains and the people who are living in that region, because a small vibration in the snow in the top level will yield to this avalanche, and definitely the people who are living, the houses which are there underneath that mountain, they will be covered with snow. Okay, so small vibration is generating that avalanche. Okay, the generating the very huge movement into the snow, and we are calling that as avalanche. So here also we are expecting that same thing. Changing in a single bit should have to give a major change inside the actual message. So we are calling this type of property as avalanche property. So our algorithm should have avalanche property. This means that a change in one bit of input should produce a change in many bits of the output. So this thing you remember. So our algorithm, it should have avalanche property. So then the key scheduling algorithm, as I said, whatever key we are selecting, that key we are not giving as it is to the encryption algorithm. Rather, we are deriving many subkeys from that actual key. So with any Feasel block cipher, the key is used to generate one subkey for each round. If you have 5 rounds, then 5 subkeys we need from the actual key. If you have 16 rounds, we need 16 subkeys from the actual key. In that way, the key scheduling algorithms are used in order to devise from, in order to get the subkeys from the actual key. Okay. So after this design principles discussion, we will get into the algorithms. What algorithms we have under this symmetric key or under this block cipher crypto systems. So the first type of algorithm that we discuss is the DES, data encryption standard. It is the first type of algorithm which has been standardized by the people in different organizations. So if you see over here, the data encryption standard DES is a symmetric key block cipher published by NIST, okay, National Institute of Standards and Technologies. So when we are saying national over here, it is not at India level, but in America. They have done in US basically. So in that, in US, it is known as NIST. So National Institute of Standards and Technologies. They have approved this DES in the year 1976, I think. Yes, 1976, and they have standardized this algorithm for to be used at public level. Okay. DES is an implementation of Feasel cipher. It uses 16 rounds of operations. How many rounds we have? 16 rounds, and the block size is 64 bit. In that, we are omitting 8 bits, and what level we will omit that 8 bits, we will see. And after omitting that, we will get 56 bits. So our key size, it is of 56 bits only. Okay. The block size is 64 bit. And the key length is also 64 bit, but we apply the permutation so as to get only 56 bit keys only. Okay, since 8 of the bits of the key are not used by the encryption algorithm, we are simply at different levels we will omit. Okay, at different levels, because 8 eights, how much it is? Okay, 64, isn't it? 8 eights, 64. In each 8 we omit 1 bit. In each 8s we omit 1 bit. So how many bits we are omitting? In each 8s we are saying. So total 8 8s we have. So in each 8, if you omit 1 bit, it will become 7 only, 7 bit only. So 8 sevens. So how much? 56. So likewise we have the key length as 56. That omission, how we are doing, means based on some permutations only we will do. Will not do simply omit this bit likewise. Because if you do like that, again it will become a problem to perform the decryption. So we apply some permutation technique so as to omit that bit, and at the destination level, again the same technique is applied to obtain the actual key from the 64-bit key to the 56-bit key. Okay. So this is the general principle or the general mechanism what we apply inside this DES algorithm. The general structure of DES is depicted in the following illustration. If you see how much plain text block size we have taken over here, 64 bit. See, we study the complete concept only for one block, and we apply the same mechanism to all the blocks available in our crypto system. Okay, We study the complete concept only for one block, and we apply the same mechanism to all the blocks available in our crypto system. So our plain text size, our block size, we have selected 64-bit. Okay, so we apply some initial permutation. So this entire thing, whatever you are seeing here inside this, it is our complete structure. Okay, so the complete DES structure. To that structure, what we are giving as an input, 64-bit block of plain text we are giving. And inside our structure, what we have some initial permutations. We have to apply some initial permutations. Then we have these rounds. How many rounds of operations we have? 16 rounds of operations we have. This permutation, it is different. Okay, initial permutation and final permutation, they are different. Okay, these rounds, in each round we are going to apply F. And as you can see, the 56-bit cipher key we have selected, and that cipher key we are giving to the round key generator. So this round key generator, what it will do? It will generate the round key at each round level. When you are applying first round, it will give first round key. It will give second round to the second. It will give the second round key to the second round. Likewise, it will give 16th round key to the 16th round. So whenever you are applying these keys, whenever you are generating this key, each key is different. Key 1 is different from key 2. Key 2 is different from key 3. Likewise, up to key 16, all keys are different. And they are generated using this round key generator. Okay. So after applying all these rounds, after applying the 16 rounds, we are getting the final permutation. We have to apply final permutation before getting the final ciphertext block, 64-bit final ciphertext block. So likewise, we apply this mechanism, DES mechanism, for all our blocks before sending it to the destination. So what three different things we have seen inside DES? Those are round functions, key scheduling, and additional processing. That additional processing is nothing but your initial and final permutation. So we see first initial and final permutation. They are just scrambling. Based on some order, they are scrambling the entire text. Okay, the initial and final permutations are straight permutation boxes. We also call them as P boxes. They are standardized. They are standardized. So, and final permutation is completely inverse to the initial permutation. Okay, they are inverse to one another. Okay, they have no cryptographic significance. And the initial permutation and final permutation they have shown over here. See, the initial permutation, the first bit we are shifting to the 40th bit. You have to remember this one. Inside initial permutation, if you are shifting your first bit to the 40th bit and second bit to the 8th bit, likewise the 58th bit to the 58th bit where we are sending to the first bit, and 64 bit to the 25th bit. The same operation, if you apply inside the 16 rounds, after the 16 rounds, if you apply the operation in reverse order, you have to see. When we shifted the first bit to the 40th bit in initial permutation, the 48th bit will be shifted to the first bit in final permutation. Okay. So in initial permutation, the first bit is shifted to the 40th bit. But in final permutation, the 40th bit is shifted to the first bit. Likewise, they are just inverse to each other. So the round function, if you see, okay, the complete block size, it will be divided into two parts, 32-bit, and this round function is applied on 32-bit. Rightmost first we select, and then leftmost we select. The same principle. Even the block size, it is subdivided, and this cryptographic function will be applied on those two blocks individually. So the heart of this cipher is the DES function, round function, and the DES function applies a 48-bit key. So the round key, whatever we are getting from that 56-bit key, is 48-bit. So the 48-bit key to the rightmost 32-bit we are taking. Okay, produce a 32-bit output. So how we are taking? From the plain text, we are taking 32 bits, and we are expanding by some expansion box. We are expanding the 32 bits into 48 bits. So that expansion you can see over here. From 32 bits, we are getting 48 bits. Okay, this particular mechanism we are applying, and we are getting 48 bit. So that 48 bit is going to be XORed. We are going to perform XOR operation with 48 bits of sub key. So then we apply some SBox. This SBox also we are going to see, and we get that 32. This scrambling box. SBox is nothing but scrambling. It will scrambling or substitute the actual message. Okay. So that SBox will scramble the given plain text into 32 bits equivalent ciphertext, and that 32 bit will put at the same place from where we have taken the plain text. Okay. So this expansion permutation box, which will convert your 32 bit input into 48 bit input, because our key size is 48 bit and we need something 48 bit in order to perform the XOR operation. So 32 bit, 48 bit, 32 bit plain text, 48 bit key. We cannot apply the XOR operation. So in order to apply the XOR operation, we need equal number of bits. So that is the reason why the 32 bit plain text we are expanding into 48 bit input with the help of this expansion permutation box. Okay. So the next thing, this is your DES, whatever permutation logic we are using in order to perform that encryption expansion that has shown over here. Then performing the XOR and substitution boxes will be applied. Okay. So then SBox rule is shown over here in this diagram. Then finally we will get that after applying the substitution, we will get the what we call ciphertext. Okay. So the key generation algorithm, here it has shown the key, the 56-bit key, 64-bit key, parity drop. As I said, the drop of every bit. So 8 cross 8, how we are dropping means by applying this parity drop, it will selectively it will drop that bit. It will not drop that bit randomly, but selectively it will drop that bit. And after dropping 8 bits, we will get 56-bit key. And from that 56-bit, what we are doing? We are dividing that 56-bit key into two parts. 28-bit shift left we are applying, and 28-bit shift left we are applying separately. And whatever we are getting using permutation box, once again we are compressing, and that compression will yield you the 48-bit round 1 key. So again, whatever round 1 key we are getting, that we are applying to the round 1, and whatever shift operations we have applied previously. See over here. Okay, at each level what we are doing, this mechanism, it is very tedious to explain because we have to apply this bit by bit. Okay, so we have the 64-bit key. That 64-bit key we are giving to parity drop. This parity drop, what it will do means, this 64 bits means how many 8s? 8 8s, isn't it? 8 8s will be having. So what it will do, from each 8 it will drop 1 bit. So we will get how many bits? 7 bits, isn't it? 7 bits. So likewise it will drop 1 bit from each 8. So we will get 7 7. How many 7s? 8 7s we will get, multiplied with 8 times, 8 7s. So after doing parity drop, we will get 8 7s. 8 7s are 56. So in this way we are getting 56-bit key. In this way we are getting, after applying the parity drop on 64-bit, we are getting the 56-bit. Here I have explained. And this parity drop, how it is doing means, it is doing selectively. Remember, again that parity drop, to discuss it will take one class. I mean to say, here we have to focus more on what happening inside the algorithm, but what is mean by SBox, what is mean by parity drop, all those things we should not focus. Okay, already I have explained what do you mean by parity drop and how this parity drop will happen. Already I have explained. At each 8, so the complete 64-bit block size, key size will be divided into 8 8s, and from each 8 it is dropping 1 bit, 1 parity bit, to get these 7 bits. And that 7 bits, if you multiply, you will get 58 bits. So that 58 bits, it is shifting into 2. It is shifting into 2. So 28 bits, 28 bits. At each level it will perform shift left operation, and this operation you have to be familiar. Shifting left, all bits will be shifted left. Okay, shift left operation it will apply, and after applying the shift left operation, again you will get 28 bits, isn't it? Shift left you are performing and you will get 28 bits. That 28 bits we are compressing. Compressing means joining together this 28 bits and this 28 bits to get the 56 bits. Sorry, this 28 to get the 56, and that 56 will be again parity drop to 48 bits, you will get round 1 key. In that sense, at each level you will get the round key, and that round key will be given to each round of operation. So in this way we are performing 16 rounds in our DES, okay, before getting the ciphertext. So DES analysis, if you see, our DES will satisfy the desired properties of a block cipher. Those two properties are nothing but the completeness and the avalanche effect. Okay, avalanche effect already I told you, if at all the cryptanalyst is trying to change one bit inside the ciphertext, it should have a drastic effect on the actual message. Okay, so that thing is nothing but avalanche property, avalanche effect, and our DES, it do support avalanche. Then completeness is nothing but each bit of the ciphertext depends on many bits of the plaintext, then only it is possible to get the avalanche effect. So one bit, if you are taking from the plaintext, it should depend on multiple bits of your plaintext, then only it is possible to achieve the avalanche effect. And every algorithm, whatever we see, whatever we discuss, it should have these two properties, avalanche effect as well as the completeness properties. And is there any breaking of this DES? Means during the last few years, cryptanalysts have found some weaknesses in DES. Okay, when key selected, whatever key we are selecting, if it is weak, okay, if the key selected is weak, definitely your complete DES will become very weak. The keys, these type of keys shall be avoided. In order to make your DES strong enough, what we have to do, we have to avoid weak keys. Okay, only this DES explanation will take more time, and whatever algorithms we are going to discuss after this, they will take less time. And inshallah, very soon we'll complete the second unit, so that we'll get into the third unit, hopefully. Okay, so thank you very much, students. In this particular class, we have covered first of all the second unit introduction, and we said we are going to discuss symmetric key as well as asymmetric key ciphers in this second unit, and we started symmetric key ciphers. In that, the block ciphers we have selected, block cipher design principles we have selected. Before that, we have seen what should be the block size, how we have to select the block size. Is there any aspects that we have to keep in mind when we are selecting the block size, that we have discussed. Then we discussed the design principles, block cipher design principles. We said three things. The first thing is the number of rounds, then the cryptographic the function, okay, the cryptographic function, then the final one is the key scheduling algorithm. And then we, after discussing the design principles, we have seen how the DES will be applied, how the DES will work, the working principle of your DES. So it is a 16 round algorithm. It will perform 16 rounds, and the block size is 64 bits, key size is also 64 bits. When you are taking block size 64 bits, before applying each round, we divide it into 32 bit equal blocks. Again, further division will be done, and your 64 bit key will be parity down to 58 bits. Okay, 64 bit to 58 bits. Okay, how we are doing that parity down, that also we have seen. Okay, then we said performing the cryptanalysis is difficult on this DES if your key is strong enough. If you select weak key, it is very easy for the cryptanalysts to perform the cryptanalysis. Hopefully you understood this concept in today's class. We further discuss the rest of the concepts in our upcoming videos. Thank you very much, students.